Hi everyone. So we are going to get started in Google Drawing by adding our color, our darkest color to our background and creating a color map. These colors that you are choosing are coming straight from the color scheme that you downloaded from Coolers. Now, what we're going to be doing is going to set you up for the best possible easy way to create your mosaic so that you get something cool and interesting whatever level of photo you are working with. So let's first start with our background. You are going to right click in the canvas space, choose background, and then add a custom color. Now let's go to our color scheme. Your darkest color is going to be your background. If you don't think that your darkest color is really that dark, you can scroll down to the shades and get a darker color. So 0%, this is the color straight from your color scheme. Once you start adding or subtracting percentage, that's when your color gets darker or lighter. So I'm going to choose the actual color from the color scheme. So I'll highlight it by clicking and dragging across those numbers, and then I'm going to copy it, go back to my Google Drawing, and paste it in the hex space. If there's a little space after all of your numbers, just delete that space and you'll see that your color does switch to the one that you chose. Now we are going to create our color map. So I just like to label this off to the side so that I remember what it is, that it's my color map. And I'm going to choose squares or rectangles to help me fill in my colors. So you're just going to copy this 4 times. All right, so this is 4 values of one color. Now you're going to have 4 values of another color, 4 values of a third color, and 4 values of a fourth color. Because if you remember your Coolers color scheme, you have your background color and then 4 other colors. So let's create our color map for each of these. You're first going to start with your lightest color that's not white. Copy that, and in your first box, go ahead and copy that in as a custom color. Then you're going to choose a color in the same hue space. So in the same column, that's a tiny bit darker. Now, typically the color directly underneath your first color is not as much of a change. So I would either skip down to the next one or sometimes even 2 or 3. Put that in your fill space as a custom color. You don't want these colors to be too different. They should look like it's 1 or 2 steps lighter than the other one. You're working with the same color space. Just pick another color that's a little bit darker. I'm going to go with this one here and copy that in as a fill custom color. Remember, if there's a space after, you delete that space. And then your last color should be the darker version of that color. The darkest version of that color might not always be the color straight from your 5-color color scheme. Now I'm going to do the same thing for my violet, my yellow, and my orange. Your next step is going to be adding your image from Google Photos or from your computer. So since you're inserting an image, you're going to insert image. Those of you in my class, you should have placed your photos into Google Photos, but it might be on your computer as well or in your drive. So take wherever your photo is and add it into your page. Then you're going to make sure that it's as large in this space as you can make it. So stretch it out so that it's the full canvas. Then click off of it to set that. Your next step is to make your canvas smaller if need be. So down here at the very bottom corner of your canvas, if you hover over that space, you get these little diagonal lines. If you click that and pull up, make your canvas fit your image. So last step for adjusting your image and your canvas is to format your photo. So click your photo, format options, and then you're going to recolor it black and white or grayscale. That's going to make it easier for you to find the highlights and shadows because you are most likely not going to be using colors that are actually in your project or in your photo. You'll be using colors from your color scheme. Feel free to add more values if you need to. You might find that you need a really dark value, or you might find that you need something even lighter than what you have, or a step between two values. That's okay to add more, as long as they come from your color scheme. Here is a very simple version of what you could be doing. I found this image and I thought it would be a good thing to use because, as you can see, it's a shaded sphere. So it's something that we've done before. So using our past knowledge to learn something new is what we're doing right here. I have labeled each line of my colors with what object they're going to be by just using a text box. It's something that you can do as well, although you do not have to. Like his beak could be the lavender, his eye could be the violet, his white part of his neck could be the yellow, and then his body could be the orange. So the first thing that I'm going to do is zoom in on the object that I want to fill in. You can fill in your object with shapes that are already created, but I find that under the line tool, the polyline is a lot easier to use because you can create shapes that are specific to what you need. So I'm going to use the polyline tool, and along the edge here of my highlight, because I like to start with my highlights, I'm going to create a shape that just fills in this space a little bit. You can see that I'm thinking about cross contour lines here as well. So I have my shape here. My next step would be to take the line and make it transparent. You don't want anything to be outlined. It's just going to add in another weird color. And then I'll change the color of my shape to be the lightest color that I've got. Then, since the rest of this area here is still pretty light, I'm just going to add more shapes that are the same color. And I'll follow the outside edge. But when I make these shapes, I'm making sure that there's a tiny gap between each one. And down here, it's still about the same color. I've got a gap. I can see this is about where that value changes. Now I'm going to work with filling in some of these spaces. Your shapes don't have to be perfectly considered each time, but it does make it easier to follow cross contours or areas like the edge of a value so that you're really thinking about the shapes that you put down so that they make sense. Like up here, the forehead makes sense because it's broken down into the planes of the face. Here, this makes sense because it follows the edge of a value. So now I'm going to do my shadow. I like doing the highlights and then doing the shadows and then filling in between. You can see that I'm not filling in the whole shadow space with one piece. That would be silly and also wouldn't make much sense because it's a mosaic. You don't want to have these massive pieces. Actually, this piece might even be too big. So for my shadow, I'm going to change this to my different fill color, my shadow fill color for my lavenders. And you can see I'm still creating all of my edges along a curve. And I'm following the shadow up. And one more piece. All right, so I have my shadows and my highlights. Let's take a look at what this is going to look like without the image. I like to do this every once in a while. So I have my selection tool clicked. I click on my image and then I cut it out of the space. So I hit Control X and it goes away. You can see the beginnings of my form. Now I hit Control Z to undo what I have just cut out. So I have my image back in. Now I'm going to work with my two midtones to fill in the rest of this. So every once in a while, you're going to want to make sure that your mosaic is coming across okay. So yes, we only do have 4 colors, but you can add more. And the way that you really check if you need to add more is use your selection tool, click your photo, and then Control X will cut that photo out. Now, looking at this, I can see that the level of craftsmanship of this sphere is not very good. It took me about 15 minutes to do this. You have 2 hours to create yours. So I want you to make careful decisions about your pieces. So here you can see where my pieces are a good amount of space apart and areas where they are too far apart, areas where it doesn't make sense how they're joined. A good example is my portrait. If we zoom in on the spaces, some of them, yes, are a little bit farther away, but you can see how close these pieces are and how they really make sense in the space that they're in. Yes, the mask is farther apart. That was intentional to make it stand out from the glasses. So really think about the designs that you're putting in, the shapes that you're putting in, and how it works and fits, especially when you're putting in something that needs to go in a specific direction, like hair or the ribbing on my sweater. In my image of the sphere, I tried to follow the cross contours of curves. It's important that you're thinking about how you're placing your pieces and what shapes you're using and how close they are to other pieces. So really take care and make sure that your craftsmanship is not this, closer to this.